Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is on a very cool CZ pistol, but one that is unfortunately discontinued. This is the CZ75 P-06. Now, a lot of people out there that do like CZs are probably asking, what the heck is a P-06? I've never heard of that model. I know the P-01, the P-07, the P-09. Well, the P-06 is just like the P-01, but instead of being chambered in 9mm, it's chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson. And of course, the P-01 and the P-06 obviously are compact versions of the CZ75. Now, most likely the reason that CZ discontinued this model is the fact that it is chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson. It's not that popular of a caliber anymore. It was huge 20 years ago, but it's kind of fallen out of favor. I actually think that it's on the uptick. There's a little bit of a resurgence and appreciation of the 40 Smith & Wesson, not enough that it will ever take over 9 or 45 ever again. It's just that I think people are learning, hey, with the new ballistics and bullet technology that we can take from the 9mm and add to the 40, it makes for an even more effective cartridge. So I don't think 40 is ever going to be dead forever because too many guns have been chambered in it, but it has lower sales, so that's probably why CZ discontinued it. I've actually reviewed this exact gun before, not just the model, but this example of this gun. It was a range report that I made quite a few years ago, and unfortunately, I didn't save the video, and I wanted to remake it. I wanted to revisit this gun. I have the opportunity to do this because the person that owns this gun is my next door neighbor, Phil. So before I tell you about the things that I like and don't like and get this gun back to the range, I want to thank the people that always make these videos possible. First and foremost is the owner of this pistol. I've already told you who he is. Phil, thank you so much for lending this to me again. I want to thank my Patreon supporters as always, because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here. You guys know we are in a constant battle with YouTube for monetization, and that money helps keep all of this content coming. So thank you so much, Patreons. And if you want to join my Patreon, you can join for as little as $1 a month. There is a link in the description below, and you get all these videos early. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who provides all of the ammunition for these range reports, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And let me tell you, if you're a fan of CZ pistols and you don't like these rubberized grips, I know that I'm not a big fan of them. Well, I have a great company for you to go check out, and that company is Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. And one of the types of pistols Mark over there is an expert in making are CZs. In fact, he makes a grip for almost the entire CZ lineup. His stuff is top notch. He's always coming out with new and innovative products. As you can see, I'm rolling in some photos of his best work. He can make grips out of laminate wood. He can put on custom logos, custom engravings, and even put on custom textures. Things that are one of a kind. And I know if you like CZ pistols like this one, you're gonna like top of the line wood grips for your gun. So I'm going to put a link in the comment section below, and I want you guys to go check out Brownworks. And as I said, I know you own a CZ pistol, and he can set you up with a unique set of grips that will be one of a kind. And when you go over to his website, look around, see what you find. If you don't find what you're looking for, make sure to contact Mark. I always tell you, he's more busy making fine wood grips for his customers than he is updating his website. And trust me, whatever you can imagine, whatever you want, he can custom make for you. So when you do contact him, thank him for supporting channels like mine and other Second Amendment content, and tell him the Texas Gun Vault sent you. Alright, so I've already told you a little bit about this pistol and what it's about, what it is. A compact CZ75, just like the P-01, but chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson. So what are the things that I like and don't like about this particular pistol? Well, I'm going to start off with the fact that it is a CZ. I have fully admitted that in the past, I avoided CZ. I'm not really sure why. In my younger years of gun collecting, they just didn't appeal to me. I was like, they're made in the old Czech Republic. And then I shot one, and I'm like, wow, these things are a lot better than I was expecting them to be. And then I researched the heritage and the history of the company and the history of the CZ75, and I learned, hey, they are really influenced by the Browning High Power. They're not a copy of the Browning High Power, but they have a lot of influence from that design, and who can go wrong with a John Browning design? And so I've grown to appreciate CZs. They honestly make some of the best firearms in the world, not just pistols, but also rifles. I also love the fact that this gun has a metal frame. Now, I have looked at guns like the P-07, which of course is a 9mm, about the same size, but it has a polymer frame. And I have to say, there's nothing like a metal framed gun. Yes, they are more heavy, but when you pick up one, you realize I'm holding a gun. I'm not holding some toy. And I'm not in any way disparaging a polymer framed handgun. I'm just saying that the feel of a all steel gun or an all metal gun, it just feels better in your hand. It feels more substantial. Something else that I'm glad that they kept from the P-01 and just added to the P-06, of course, is the accessory rail. Now, I don't have anything on this particular gun today. I don't have a light or a laser, but I like to have that option. I definitely think this is a gun that is competing with the Glock 23, which is their compact version of the Glock pistol, but chambered in .40. And having that rail, I think, makes the gun more applicable in today's self-defense scenarios where you have the lights, the lasers, or any other type of accessory that you may want to put out there. And the last thing that I'm really a big fan of is the fact this thing is in .40. Now, while .40 is not my favorite caliber, I do still think it is a little bit snappy. As I mentioned in the opening of this video, I have grown to appreciate this caliber a little more. Maybe I've become a better shooter, and I just like the .40 a little bit more. It's not my favorite. I only have one carry gun in .40. I really do prefer 9mm or 357 SIG, but .40 is a pretty good cartridge, especially when you take the bullet and ballistic technology that we've applied to 9mm up to .40. I really think you get a potent self-defense cartridge if you like the .40 and can handle the snappiness of the .40 a little bit more and don't mind a little bit of a diminished capacity in the magazine. So now let's talk about a couple of the things about this gun that I don't like. And one of them is the inverted rails. If you guys don't know, most of the CZs have inverted rails. So your typical Glocks 1911s, they surround the frame. This one actually has the slide writing inside of the frame. And the big downside to that is you don't get a lot of surface area on the slide to cock it. As you can see, these cocking serrations are very small. And I got kind of fat fingers, and I find that can be a little bit difficult when I'm racking the slide. I just want a little bit more purchase, I guess they call it. Now, for some people, that's not really a big issue at all. For me, it kind of is. Now, I wish there was a way to have the inverted rails and a little bit more surface on that. I understand why the inverted rails are there, but for me, that is one of the big detriments and one of the things I don't like about many of the CZ pistols. I'm also not a big fan of many of the factory grips that they put on their guns. They like to ship them with these rubberized grips, and I always jokingly say they feel like 1980s car steering wheels. They're just too rubbery, they're too soft for me. They have a good texture to them, but for me they just feel cheap. I would much rather have wood or maybe a hard plastic on that. Now, some people are going to say I have that completely wrong. These grips are awesome. Now remember, this is a review from my personal perspective, and these are my opinions. I'm not saying these grips are bad or that they're not going to work for you or that you shouldn't like them. I'm just saying for me, I don't like them, and that is why. This pistol also is before they came out with the Omega trigger. Now, something that I really like on the modern CZs is the Omega trigger, where it feels better, has a better reset, but also you can go between a safety or a decocker. And on this particular model, you only have the option of a decocker. So we have that here in the back. It safely decocks the firearm, and that's it. It's not a safety. So personally, when it comes to a hammer-fired gun, I like the option of being able to carry it cocked and locked. So having the safety on there or be able to go back and forth between the two would be a huge advantage. So it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it is something about the gun that I don't like. I'm not that big a fan of decocker-only firearms. The last thing about this gun that for me kind of feels a little bit weird is even though this is a compact pistol, I find that the grip length is a little bit too short. If you ever compare a CZ P-01 or a P-06 next to, let's say, a Glock 19 or a Glock 23, it's a little bit shorter, and the size of my fingers, which I have mentioned, are a little bit bigger maybe than most, a little bit fat. If I hold the gun, I find that my third finger, my pinky, is kind of almost falling off the frame. So if I have a flush fit magazine, it's not that comfortable, where the Glock is a little bit longer. In fact, most compact pistols are a little bit longer. This has been the main reason I've never bought a P-07. When I hold that, I'm like, it's just too short. If it was a little bit shorter and a subcompact frame, it'd be okay. I can have the pinky dangling a little bit. If it's a little bit longer, I can get all three fingers on there. But for me, it rides right in the middle, and it's not as comfortable. I just wish that grip had a little bit longer surface on it so I could get all three fingers and have it be the same size as, let's say, a Glock 19 or a Glock 23. All right, so those are the things that I like and don't like about this particular pistol. So let's get this thing back to the range. As always, I'm going to set up the target at 7 yards for my first couple of magazines. In fact, I'm going to shoot 2 magazines through this first because the capacity on this is only 10 rounds. And that's just because 40 is a little bit wider than 9mm, and they have to fit those cartridges into the magazine so you get a little bit less room in there. So I'm just curious how this thing is going to shoot. I haven't shot it in a long time. What's 40 going to feel like in a CZ? And also discover if I have any issues whatsoever with this gun. So let's get this thing to the range, 20 rounds. Let's see how I do. And the gun was shooting a little bit low and to the left, and so I had to walk it into the center of the target. When it comes to the 40 and how snappy it is, yeah, it definitely is snappier than a 9mm, but this metal frame definitely mitigates that recoil pretty good. And something that I do remember when I shot this originally many years ago was the longer reset. I guess most of the CZs that I have reviewed recently all have the Omega trigger in them or have some other type of upgrade like the Cajun Gunworks triggers, and they are so superior to the old style CZ triggers. This has a long reset and kind of a mushy take up. And so the newer triggers are better, but it's functional for a duty gun. But I think some of the accuracy plays into effect because of that. And then of course, I think some of the accuracy is also because the gun is not sitting in my hand as well as I would hope, because I said it has that shorter frame. The grip either needs to be just a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. All right, so now I'm gonna set the target out at a little bit further distance, probably about 15 yards, put another magazine through this and see what happens to this group. Now I know what the tendency of this gun is. Can I shoot it any better? Well, let's just see. And so we're still shooting a little bit to the left, and that also could be because of the size of the grip. I might be putting a little bit too much of my finger into the trigger guard, and so I'm just pulling it a little bit to the left. Something else some of you may have noticed is that when I'm chambering the first round with a full magazine, that round kind of sticks as it's entering the chamber. Now 40 does have typically a flat nose to it, and I have discovered in certain models I do occasionally get hang-ups because of that. So it's happened 2 times now, so I don't know if that's going to be an issue that's going to persist. Alright, so the next test I'm going to do is to shoot it against a barrier. Essentially it's kind of like a bench rest. I'm going to set the target at about 20 or 25 yards, see if I can get this group any better, especially if I take as much of the human element out of the equation as possible. So let me load up another magazine and see how I do at a further distance. And even when I'm aware of the issue, I'm still shooting to the left. I'm really taking my time. I'm really trying to concentrate. I know that I'm not pulling the gun. It's just shooting left to me. And of course, I'm aiming for the center of the target. So I'm not trying to necessarily compensate for that. Something I noticed when I was taking my time, this trigger pull has a little bit of a pinch to it when it comes to the bottom of the trigger. Now you guys know I do prefer curved triggers. However, the trigger here is extremely curved, and right here at the bottom of the trigger with my fat finger as I'm pulling it, it kind of pinches my finger between the trigger and the trigger guard just a little bit. So I have to make sure to ride that trigger higher than I naturally want to. But because that trigger is so curved, it doesn't give me a lot of room for my fatter finger. And as I think you also saw, the first round in the magazine was also sticking just a little bit, so that problem is persisting. I'm not having any problems when it comes to chambering any other rounds. I'm not having any other failure to feeds. It just seems to be that first round when the magazine is completely topped off. All right, so now I want to give my wife Becky a chance to shoot this. I'm kind of curious what she's going to think. Typically, she does not like 40 Smith & Wesson. She thinks it's too snappy, especially in the smaller guns. But who knows? This is a metal framed gun. She has held it here on the workbench and said, hey, that actually fits my hand really well. Now, of course, being a woman, she has smaller hands, and this shorter grip really does work for her. So let's see how she shoots this thing, if she does any better than I do, and what she thinks of the recoil. And I think she shot it about as good as I did. It was shooting to the left for her as well. And when she got done shooting it, she says, I don't like that. It was just too snappy for her. You might also notice in that footage that she was having weak ejections. Now, she's not necessarily limp wristing, but she does have weaker wrists than I do. So she didn't have any failures to feed or eject, but they were ejecting coming back in the 5 or the 6 o'clock position where I was not having that issue. So I think if you have weaker wrists or you're a little bit recoil sensitive, you might have issues with this particular gun. And this is an older example, and this recoil spring has been worn in a little bit. So it's not like it's over tensioned or anything. So that's just what I'm experiencing, and who knows, that might be some of the issue when it comes to chambering that first round as well. It might need to have a new spring in it. Sometimes a brand new spring in an old gun can do wonders, but I'm not having any other issues besides that. But overall, she said she just didn't like it. She does like the P-01, but I really think it is the caliber. She's just not as big of a fan of 40 maybe as some other people. She's just really used to 9. And that's just one of the things. If you're going to shoot 40, you have to be expecting that snappier recoil. The action of the gun just moves a little bit quicker. Not that it hits harder in your hand, it just moves the slide a little bit quicker. And of course, you guys know how the laws of physics work, and that quicker action just gives you a different perception and a different feel as the weight of the gun comes back in your hand. All right, so the next test I'm going to do, and the final test before I give you guys my final thoughts, is of course the quick magazine change. And I'm actually wondering, am I going to have a problem when I put in a new magazine in this gun? Is it going to stick if I try to chamber it really, really fast? Can I shoot the gun fast with the longer trigger pull? Well, I guess we're going to find out. So let's see what happens. Well, luckily I didn't have any issues when it came to chambering the first round. However, the longer reset and the heavier trigger pull made that second magazine kind of be a little bit weird when it came to the rhythm. The first magazine was just fine, and then I kind of lost the feel of it. I can't shoot this as fast. This is definitely more of a duty trigger than a competition trigger. I actually find that the factory Omega triggers are definitely better when it comes to this type of shooting, but the older triggers, because of that longer take up and the longer reset, sometimes I just get a little bit out of rhythm. But changing the magazine was really quick, and I didn't have a problem chambering that first round. So the gun has worked well, and I haven't had any other malfunctions. So what are my final thoughts on the CZ P-06? A really cool and discontinued model, and I think if you are a CZ collector, you definitely want to have one in your collection. Even if you're not a fan of 40 or a fan of this size pistol, you just got to have one to kind of complete the collection. It's definitely cool, it's definitely interesting. I kind of put it in the same category as the CZ97 chambered in 45. It's also a discontinued model. You just kind of have to have one if you're a CZ fanboy or a girl. So the gun ran great for me. I had no issues besides those first rounds coming out of the magazine. No failures to feed, no failures to eject. The gun was a little bit snappy. It wasn't the most accurate for me. I would probably have to adjust the sights or just train with this a little bit more. And I know some people are going to say, Jason, you're just not a good shot. Well, go check out some of my other range reports. I actually do shoot some guns really, really well. And while I'm not Jerry Michalik, I'm not 22 Plinkster, I do know what I'm doing, and I'm always trying to aim for the center of the target. This one just doesn't shoot as well for me as other CZs. Now, I do know my next door neighbor Phil shoots this gun pretty darn good. So it's probably me, it is human error, I would just have to get used to it. So when it comes to my final thoughts on this pistol, it definitely checks some boxes for me. And of course, those being the cool factor, the collectability factor, the quality factor, this gun is definitely quality. It is a CZ, and as I said, I've really grown to appreciate these guns. But it has a few shortcomings, as I have already spoken about and as you have seen. I really wish there was a nice trigger upgrade in this gun. So if I personally own this, this might be one of those CZs that I would buy those Cajun Gunworks trigger upgrades for and go in that direction, because I think the trigger in general is the biggest downside to this particular model. And of course, the frame size. For the size of hands that I have, it's not as comfortable. But if you have maybe bigger hands where you can only fit 2 fingers on this, or you have smaller hands where you can get all 3 fingers, it might be perfect for you. And just like I tell people when it comes to the P-07, you need to handle one of these before you buy one if you have the opportunity, just to make sure that it fits your hand. So on my star system, how would I rate the CZ75 P-06 chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson? Well, this gun definitely gets a high score, but not a perfect score. I had too many issues with it, but it does get 4 out of 5 stars. It's a solid offering. It has the cool factor. It works. But when it comes to my personal tastes, it's only 4 out of 5 stars with the size of the frame and of course the issues with it picking up out of the magazine and the trigger pull. But those are things that can be overcome by changing out a few things on the gun and of course training with it. But if I was a huge CZ collector, I do like CZs and I have quite a few, I would definitely want one of these just because I would have to complete the collection. And you don't see them every day. They're really cool. They're definitely interesting. So if you have a P-01, you got to get a P-06 to go with it. So 4 out of 5 stars, CZ P-06. What do you guys think? Do you own one of these? Have you ever shot one of these? I'm sure you've shot a P-01, but I'm telling you, having one of these chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson, it is a little bit different of a beast. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.